It's time for Coach Billy Donovan to figure out what he wants to do with this young Chicago Bulls roster. We're going to be talking about if Billy Donovan is in fact the right coach for the Chicago Bulls and what he is going to need to do this season in order to get the max out of this roster. This is your host, Rico Greenhowe, and this is another episode of Bulls Digest. And before we jump into the hot topic of today, I want to go ahead and share a special message from the sponsor of today's video, NordVPN. Hopefully the Chicago Bulls can get a clearer plan and move the franchise forward. Unlike the Chicago Bulls, you can have a plan when it comes to protecting your devices from online threats. That's right. The best way to do this is with NordVPN, which you can get by clicking the link in the description to this video. With NordVPN Threat Protection Pro, you can block against fake websites, against phishing, and other fraud and other scams online. That's right. You can go ahead and protect your Wi-Fi from being compromised with a single click. You can encrypt and defend your virtual private network. Make sure that you go ahead and you improve your security and block pop-ups. And once again, you can go ahead and get this with nordvpn.com/bulls. This is an exclusive offer where you get 4 months of extra service along with Nord's risk-free 30-day money-back guarantee. All right, so we are talking about head coach Billy Donovan of the Chicago Bulls, and he has got a tough job ahead of him for this season. But, we're asking the question, is he really the right coach for this particular job and what he's going to need to do to help the Chicago Bulls get to their max potential as far as the players that are on this roster? And so, I think that Billy Donovan for right now is going to be the best coach, I guess, for this particular situation. I think that as we continue to get better, I don't see Billy Donovan being around as we start to ascend to a championship level, but I think he can definitely help us as far as growing some of these younger players. And so when we look at his record, you'll see that he had some pretty successful teams with OKC, and really, he didn't go under the 500 marks until he got to the Chicago Bulls. And I think a lot of people can say that, when he got to the Chicago Bulls, essentially he was having some very good success when Lonzo Ball was out there. You could probably argue that, hey, with Lonzo Ball, with Lavine and those guys healthy, that was more of the playing style that Billy Donovan wanted to go ahead and play with. Obviously, that takes a hit when you have your player like Lonzo Ball goes down and then Lavine, these guys start to be injured. So I will give Billy Donovan that. But, there's other things that have kind of factored into, this whole situation of, is Billy Donovan really the right coach? And I think that one of the real issues that I've had with Billy Donovan, and maybe some of the fans have had as well, is just he's got to trust the younger guys. All right. So he needs to really play younger guys. I think this is going to be the year where he cannot rely on some of the veterans like he has done in the past. All right. So he doesn't have DeMar DeRozan. He doesn't have Alex Caruso. If you look back at some of the teams that he's coached, in fact, the last team that he was the last time he was with OKC, he had Steven Adams on that team. He had Chris Paul on that team. He had Dennis Schroeder. Like, these are players that were established vets. And so this is going to be a situation where, yes, he does have Zach Lavine, he has Vooch, he has Lonzo Ball, but really, does he have those players? Because, I'm not sure that Lonzo Ball is going to be there, number one, for the long haul, and I think he's probably going to be on some type of minutes restriction. Not sure if he's going to play a whole bunch of games. Zach Lavine, you have to really wonder how long they're going to keep him on the roster along with Vooch. So he's really going to have to trust trust younger players a lot more than he's had to do in the past. And so the great thing about Billy Donovan that I will say is that he has worked with some younger players and had some success in the past. Thinking back to when they were in the 2019-2020 bubble, if I'm not mistaken, that team ended up making the playoffs. Now, again, they did have Chris Paul, but they had a young Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They had Lou Dort on that roster as well. And he was able to coach that guard-heavy roster into a favorable situation to where they got to the playoffs, and he eventually became the coach of the year. And so, this is what I'm talking about with Billy Donovan and the trust. He's got to be able to trust a guy like Coby White, and he's got to allow Coby White to now make the decisions that DeMar DeRozan had to make in the clutch. I've said this before. I think that Coby White is probably going to be the closest right now to being a franchise player for us. And look, I think he's willing to run up the chimney right now because he wants all the smoke of being a leader for this team, which I absolutely love that. So he's going to have to trust a guy like Coby White. Next, with Dosunmu. All right, so with Dosunmu, he's got to understand that this is probably going to be one of his best defenders, along with a guy like Patrick Williams. And he's going to have to continue to develop those players. And so I think that that's another aspect to Billy Donovan's coaching career. And as far as what he's going to have to do this year is he's going to have to show that he can definitely develop some young players, because Patrick Williams has been stagnated in his growth. You've seen the leaps that Dosunmu has taken. I'm curious to see, how much better Billy Donovan can get both of those players. So we're going to be looking closely at what he can do from a development standpoint. And not to mention also, too, he's going to have to figure out what he's wanting to do with Modest Buzelis. A lot of the growing that Modest Buzelis is going to have to go through has to deal with development. Like, he's going to have to become a lot better three-point shooter, right? And he's going to have to get more comfortable knocking down those shots on the offensive end. And I would expect for Billy Donovan to start to develop him, make the adjustments to put him in places where he can be successful here. So that's part of it as well. And so lastly, it's adjustments. All right. And so speaking of adjustments, I think that Billy Donovan is going to have to play bigger lineups, right? I think that he's been hesitant to play bigger lineups, and he's going to have to go out here and play players like Sanogo, Jalen Smith, who have shown that if you give them minutes, they could be pretty effective for you. And so he's going to have to go with bigger lineups. Look at what the Cleveland Cavaliers are doing in the Eastern Conference with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. It's okay to play bigger lineups. You don't have to continue to roll guards out here, all right? And so lastly, with the players on the bench, so Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips, it's time that Billy Donovan recognizes that he's going to have to now coach for the future and not just the present of this current roster. What that means, you can't have Torrey Craig and Javon Carter in the way of developing Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips, especially when you have Julian Phillips playing just 8.1 minutes a game in his 40 appearances. Like, I get that he got hurt, but how are you going to be able to know exactly what you have unless you play those players? Shout out to the Chicago Bears who played Caleb Williams yesterday. You have to see what you have, all right? And in order to see if you've got that guy, you need to play your guys. And so that's the thing with Billy Donovan. You need to move some of these older players out of the way. And yes, you're going to have to manage some egos, but in order for the Chicago Bulls to get to the bigger picture, he is going to have to really do a lot as far as massaging egos and getting these players some minutes. So that leads me to the final part of the video where we're asking the questions to you, the viewer. Do you feel like Billy Donovan is, in fact, the right coach for this job right now? Do you feel like, I'm thinking here that Billy Donovan is the right coach for right now, but as we start to begin to start winning some games and moving in the right direction, Billy Donovan is probably not going to be here. Are you in agreement with me that, he's got to figure out a way to move some of these older players out the way in order for our younger talent to play and start to develop in in games, not just practice. All right. And lastly, too, what are you thinking about the adjustments? Because I definitely think that Billy Donovan has got to look at his adjustment schemes, not just as far as just the rotations, but also to a little bit of the playing style for me sometimes with Billy Donovan. I think that he puts out lineups that he doesn't make adjustments to the defense out there, in my opinion. But anyhow, just want to thank you out there for watching the videos and let you know that 72.1% of you that watch the videos are not subscribed to the channel. Make sure that you continue to reverse slam on that subscribe button, because it means a lot to me as we try to reach 5,000 subscribers before the NBA season starts. And even though we're talking about making coaching adjustments, we're nowhere near training camp, even though it is coming up. I'm still saying go Bulls. And as usual, I'll see you on the next one. Peace.